It is time to stop letting the devil use this tactic against you. Yes, he's been lying to you. Yes, he's been stealing things from you. Yes, he's been trying to kill God's plans and purposes for your life. He has all kind of little strategies and maneuverings and ways to go about doing that. But this one thing that he's been using against you is the one thing that has been destroying everything in your life. It is your very own words. It is when he comes into our thoughts, starts saying things, putting these ideas in our minds, and then we grab a hold of it thinking it's our own thoughts and just want to get it out and vent and start sharing those words with either other people or simply speaking them over our own lives. It is his way of getting us to speak his plans over our lives, which then gives him leverage to use against us so that he can bring those plans into fruition. We're not going to let him do that anymore. The way we see how this has been operating in our lives is by looking at what happened when he did this to Job. Job is a man in the Bible who's doing absolutely phenomenal. Nothing wrong in his life. He's pretty much a perfect man. And there's this incident where it happens in heaven where God is up there, the devil goes and God says, "Hey man, look, you ever look at my boy Job? I mean, my dude's doing a good job." And the devil says, "Yeah, he's all right, but you're protecting him. If you let me go at him, I bet you he'd cuss you. He would cuss you to your face." And God says, "Tell you what, look, you don't kill him, don't touch his body, but do what you do. Go ahead, and we'll see what happens." So the devil comes back to earth, goes find Job, and ends up taking away all of his money and all of his family. He kills his livestock, kills his children, ruins his houses. So basically, his ability to make money and his support system completely gone instantly. Job is completely devastated. He is distraught. This is not how Job thought his life would end up. All of a sudden, all his plans, all of what he envisioned for his life, completely down the drain. I wonder if you're watching this video right now and you've had plans for your life, things that you anticipated were going to unfold a certain way, when you were going to get into that relationship, how you were going to get onto this job, how much money you were going to be making, what your ministry would look like, whatever it may be. I'm pretty sure there's things in your life that you envision would be a certain way that aren't that way. And it could be that things all of a sudden took a nosedive. You were in perfect health, and then all of a sudden it completely changed. When these things happen, we start getting these thoughts in our minds, thoughts of discouragement, disillusion, depression. We get frustrated. We start wondering, how am I ever going to come out of this? We feel fear. We get anxious. We start ruminating and worrying about the future. And as these thoughts start bombarding our minds, we really get tempted to start venting or start saying things out of line, because that's what happened with Job when he was in our circumstances. See, during his ordeal, Job never cusses God. And I would imagine, since that's what the debate was about, that was what the devil was trying to get him to do. He goes back, the devil goes to God and says, "Hey, look, well, yeah, he didn't cuss you, but it's because you didn't let me make him sick. But if you let me touch his body, then he's going to cuss you, right?" And so God says, "Tell you what, all right, go ahead on down, do it, just can't kill him." So then Job comes back to earth and he makes Job sick. He puts skin boils on his body that are super painful. And during this time, Job is still in his head, just like you and I. Man, what is happening? I feel so discouraged. This hurts. Why, wondering. And he doesn't cuss God. Again, the situation was not, I can make him sick, or I can take his money, or I can hurt him in this way. The whole situation was, I bet you he'll curse you out. And God says, all right, go ahead and try to make him do it. Well, the devil wasn't able to make him do it, apparently, because he wasn't doing it. So guess what Job's wife comes up and tells Job? She says, how about you just cuss God and die? Now, isn't that interesting? Of all the things she could have told Job for him to get out of this situation, she told him, just go ahead and cuss God and die. Now, she could have said, how about you go to Domino's, get a pizza, come back for the rest of the evening, watch some Netflix, and just relax. She didn't say that. She could have said, hey, look, here's my iPhone. Get on TikTok, scroll, scroll, scroll until your mind numbs and you just feel all better. She didn't say that. She could have said, hey, why don't you turn on the game? She said, look, she could have said, we're going to go on vacation. We're going to take a trip to Europe. We're going to fly on this airplane and just land by the next evening and go on the beach and relax. She didn't do that, though. She said, cuss God and die. Where did she get that idea from? Where do you think she got the idea from? Did it just come out of nowhere? You see behind the scenes in the story of Job where the whole ordeal was, I bet you I can make him cuss you. And so when Job is going through it, his wife goes through it with him and sees all this pain. And so all of a sudden she has this thought, well, why don't he just cuss God and die? Hey, Job, why don't you just cuss God? That was the devil getting in her mind and using her thoughts against her to say something because he was trying to impose his will on Job. In this situation, what we're seeing is that her thoughts were not her own. Her words were not her own, really. I mean, she did choose to say them, but they were influenced by satanic measures. I wonder if you're going through something right now and you're tempted to say something. You're tempted to say, I will never get out of this. My dad was this way. I have no modeling. I'll always be this way. Or maybe you'll say, I will never be able to change this about me. Or maybe you'll say that, people will never accept me. I'll never fit in. Maybe you'll say that I'll always look this way. Maybe you'll say that I can't ever pray, or I don't understand the Bible, or whatever you say out loud, these little strongholds. I'll never make more money than this. I'll never be able to fast longer than 4 hours. All these little limiting beliefs and statements that we make. I'm just depressed. I'm just anxious. I'm just discouraged. We say these things and pronounce these things over our lives. Where are those thoughts coming from? Could it be that they're being inserted against you so that the devil can then express them through your mouth and use your own mouth against you? Now, I know as I say this, we get into this little hang up sometimes because we feel like perhaps as Christians can't be possessed. Christians can't be really influenced to say things, by the devil. And so that really doesn't work that way, right? Well, let's look at it. Because in the New Testament, there's another story that gives us more insight into this. It is when Jesus is walking with the disciples and he says, hey, who does everyone say that I am? And the disciples say, oh, some say you're John the Baptist. Some say you're Elijah who's come back. And he says, that's pretty cool, but who do y'all say that I am? He said y'all too, because he's from Southeast Louisiana like me in the New Orleans area. He said, who do y'all say that I am? And they said, Peter says, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. In other words, Peter says, you are the promised Messiah from the Old Testament that we've been waiting for thousands of years. And Jesus says, you are blessed, Simon Bar-Jonah is Peter's real name, because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you. So it's not just what people said to you about me, like the others who said I was John the Baptist and all. It's not that. You are blessed because my Father in heaven revealed this to you. In other words, God from heaven put thoughts in Peter's mind, giving him revelation. And then Peter verbalized those thoughts and said, you are the Christ. Yet 6 verses later, or maybe 5 verses, no, 5.5 verses later, Jesus then says, well, I'm going to also, by the way, towards Jerusalem, and they're going to put me on trial, and they're going to lie on me and beat me and spit on me, and they're going to nail me to a cross, and I'm going to die. And Peter's like, hold up. Ain't nobody going to kill you. You my homie. I got this sword right here. I got your back. Let them run up on you, and I'm going to handle your business for you. You know what I'm saying? I got you lightweight. And Jesus says, get thee behind me, Satan. Because you're not being mindful of the things of God. You're being mindful of things from a human perspective. So this Christian, Peter, this disciple, who was one of the apostles, who preached the first message the day the church was born when the Holy Spirit was poured out for the first time, that same cat was in one instance speaking for God, yet in another, just a few verses later, speaking for Satan. What was he speaking Satan's words about? About stopping Jesus from going to the cross. So you see, when we get into situations, Christian or non-Christian, the devil can insert thoughts in our minds and we can begin to speak things out loud that will speak against God's plan for our lives. Because maybe it is God's plan that you be healed. Maybe it is God's plan that you be set free from that addiction, from that vice that's got you gripped and won't seem to let you go, that you keep giving up and getting back entangled. And maybe it is God's will that you be different than your dad. Maybe it is God's will that you get with the right guy who doesn't mistreat you or cheat on you or hit on you. Maybe it is God's will, yet because we're so wrapped up in the pain of what we're going through, which is a very real aspect of what we're experiencing, we begin to speak the devil's plan and say we'll never or we'll always, and we begin to say things that keep us trapped. Understand, however, that there is power in our words, that life or death comes from what we speak. When we speak the words of God, the scriptures that we sit with and meditate on and we proclaim over our lives, it produces life in our situations and it produces God's plan in our life. But whenever we begin to think these demonic thoughts without realizing, assuming that they're our own, and we speak those words out loud, even if we're just venting, even if we're just posting on social, even if we're just saying it under our breath, we're saying these things. We begin to speak the devil's plan for our lives and allow him more leverage to come and use our words against us. It is time for you to shut this tactic down, to take this weapon out of the enemy's arms and to close your mouth to his words, to resist him by submitting to God, causing him to then flee from you, and then you to latch on to what God is saying about you and your circumstances and speak those words of life. Be set free from the demonic words and learn to speak God words over your situation and over your life.